So if you want to fix a budget, you do the math.
Right. You look at the numbers.
Yeah, you look at the numbers. Or if you want to fill an empty room, you just buy more chairs.
Exactly. You just add chairs.
Right. But if you want to cure loneliness, well, the math it's just completely useless.
It really is. It's a completely paradoxical emotional landscape.
Yeah, and in fact, adding more people to the room might actually be the exact thing that's making you feel so isolated.
We naturally try to treat loneliness as a deficit of bodies in a room. Like we look around, we see nobody, and we think, oh, that's the problem.
Right. Just need more friends.
Exactly. But that linear approach, it fails almost every single time we apply it to human connection.
Which is exactly why we are tackling this today. For this deep dive into the source material, we are pulling from a really fascinating stack of sources to completely reframe how we think about feeling alone.
Yeah, we've got behavioral science journals and personal essays from entrepreneurs.
And even some classic psychoanalysis, right?
Yes, so Carl Jung.
Right. And the mission here is to shift loneliness from a math problem, like counting the number of friends in your phone, to what the sources call a translation problem.
A translation problem. And that begins with a scenario that I think almost everyone has experienced at least once.
Okay, let's unpack this. What's the scenario?
So the author of one of our source essays paints this incredibly vivid picture of a dinner party in Bangkok.
Okay.
And it's this massive long table, like 12 people deep.
Oh, wow, that's a big table.
Yeah. And food is being passed around, glasses are clinking. The conversation is loud and fast.
Sounds great.
Right. Everyone seems entirely pleased with themselves.
On paper, that sounds like peak social success. You're invited, you're in the mix.
On paper, exactly. It is the literal opposite of lonely.
Right.
But the author describes sitting there, sweating in the heat and just nodding in all the right places for 4 straight hours.
4 hours of just nodding.
Yeah. And the entire time, they're carrying this one heavy sentence sitting right in the center of their chest. A sentence they knew with absolute certainty that they were not going to say out loud to anyone at that table.
And when they finally leave that party, how do they feel?
They walked home feeling completely scraped out.
Scraped out. That is such a visceral phrase.
It really is.
It implies being hollowed out, not just empty, like something was taken from you.
Yes, exactly.
And that scraped out feeling makes zero logical sense until you realize that loneliness isn't physical at all.
Right.
Which Carl Jung actually proved decades ago. And he's kind of the philosophical anchor for our sources today.
He is. Jung really turned conventional wisdom upside down here.
How so?
Well, he argued that loneliness does not come from having no people around you. It comes from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to yourself. Or alternatively, from holding certain views which others find inadmissible.
Right. So think about the standard logistical advice people give you when you say you're lonely.
Oh, yeah, like join an intramural softball team.
Right. Or start a book club or go to a networking event.
Those logistical fixes, they treat the human condition like simple arithmetic.
Yeah.
The prescription is always just add more people to your immediate vicinity.
Which makes no sense. I mean, if my computer has a corrupted hard drive, buying a second monitor doesn't fix the code.
No, it doesn't.
Adding hardware doesn't fix a software bug.
That's a great analogy.
And if the bug is that I can't speak my mind, well, a crowded room is just more monitors?
It's more monitors, yeah. Jung is pointing out that the real gap isn't the physical distance between you and the guy sitting next to you at dinner.
Right.
It's the internal bottleneck between what's happening inside your own head and what eventually makes it out of your mouth.
That internal bottleneck is where the isolation actually lives.
Exactly. You can have a flawlessly executed social calendar.
Yeah.
You can be the life of the party, organizing the group chats, hosting the dinners.
Yeah.
And the sources note that very often the loneliest people are the ones who spend the entire evening talking without ever saying a single true thing.
Because they're busy telling what the author calls a decoy story.
A decoy story, yes.
And honestly, think about the answer you gave the last time an acquaintance asked, hey, how have you been?
Oh, you always give the smoothed over version.
Right, the PR-friendly version of your week.
Yes. And the sources give a brilliant case study on this from the author's own life.
Right. This was regarding the sale of a business during the pandemic.
Yeah. So the author had crafted this perfectly sealed, tidy little narrative for anyone who asked about the sale.
And what was the decoy story?
The story was, the timing was lucky I got out clean. I'm excited for the next thing.
Which sounds like a huge success, but I'm assuming that wasn't the whole truth.
Well, it was factually true,
Okay.
but it omitted the most important part of their reality. What they left out was the massive identity crisis that swallowed them whole immediately after signing the papers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they went from being a person whose entire identity was wrapped up in running this company to waking up with absolutely no idea what their purpose was.
That's a huge shift.
It is. And they carried that hollow feeling around for 2 years.
2 years of waking up, lost, but telling people you're excited for the next thing.
Yeah.
But I have to wonder, you know, why hide that? I mean, if I sold a business, I might feel pressure to project success, sure. But was it shame?
That's a good question.
Did they feel like they weren't allowed to complain because they had the successful financial exit?
The author actually explicitly addresses that, and it wasn't really born out of shame.
Okay.
It was a much quieter, more insidious assumption. They simply couldn't picture anyone actually wanting to hear the messy, complicated version of the story.
Oh, I see. So they assumed the audience didn't have the capacity to care.
Yes, exactly. They decided repeatedly that the messy answer wouldn't be welcome in a casual chat over coffee.
Wow.
And according to Jung's framework, that assumption is the exact mechanism that manufactures loneliness.
Because we isolate ourselves based on our own internal predictions about other people? Okay, so let's unpack this a bit more. Because if the root of our isolation is holding back our true thoughts just because we assume nobody wants to hear them, what happens when we actually put that assumption to the test?
Well, behavioral scientists at the University of Chicago Northwestern and UT Austin wanted to measure exactly that.
Okay.
They set up a series of experiments to see what happens when you force people past the decoy story.
How did they do it?
They brought strangers into a lab, paired them up, and gave them cue cards.
All right.
Half the pairs were instructed to discuss purely superficial topics.
The safe stuff. You know, weather TV shows where you bought your shoes.
Right. The standard conversational buffer zones.
Yeah.
But the other half were instructed to discuss genuinely weighty, intimate topics right out of the gate.
Like what?
Things like, when was the last time you cried in front of another person?
Oh, wow.
Or what are you most deeply grateful for in your life?
Wait, they went from talking about the weather to when was the last time you broke down crying with a total stranger?
Yes, right away.
The awkwardness must have been suffocating. I mean, I'd be looking for the fire exit.
The participants felt the exact same way.
Oh, I bet.
Before the experiment began, everyone assigned to the deep conversation group reported high levels of anticipatory dread.
Cred. Yeah, that's the word.
They braced themselves for agonizing tension. But the data from the outcome proved everyone's predictions wildly wrong.
Let me guess they didn't all flee the room.
Far from it. The deep conversations were universally rated as less awkward, vastly more enjoyable, and created a significantly stronger sense of connection than the superficial small talk.
Wait, less awkward to talk about crying than to talk about the weather.
Yes, less awkward.
That completely dismantles the excuse we all use to stay quiet. You know, we tell ourselves, oh, I don't want to burden them or they'll think I'm weird.
Exactly.
But why does it work? Why do strangers suddenly care about your heavy baggage?
The mechanism at play is a shared sense of human relief.
Relief.
When you drop your decoy story, you are signaling to the stranger across from you that they're allowed to drop theirs.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
We are all carrying these heavy unspoken sentences, so your vulnerability gives them permission to put their burden down for a minute, too.
We crave that level of authenticity because it validates our own hidden, messy feelings.
Right.
And the sources point to another piece of research that explains why our internal radar is so terrible at predicting this relief. The Mannheim research, right?
Yes.
The beautiful mess effect. Researchers at the University of Mannheim identified this massive cognitive blind spot we all share.
Okay.
When we look at our own moments of vulnerability, like admitting we don't know what we're doing, asking for help, or sharing a scary truth,
Yeah.
we evaluate those actions as signs of weakness. We look in the mirror and think, I am a mess.
We feel exposed and incompetent, like we're failing.
But the crucial finding is that when we witness someone else doing those exact same things, our brain processes it entirely differently.
Really?
We don't see weakness in them. We see courage. We see authenticity.
We evaluate the identical behavior positively in others while punishing ourselves for it.
That is wild. So our silence isn't based on actual evidence of how people will react.
No, it's not.
Which means it's like a terrible weather forecast.
A terrible weather forecast, yes.
We're looking at our own internal radar predicting this massive hurricane of judgment and rejection. So we board up the windows, lock the doors, and just stay inside our decoy story.
Right.
But the hurricane never actually arrives. We're just sitting in the dark, isolating ourselves for a storm that doesn't exist.
The forecast is entirely a projection of our own insecurities. The damage of loneliness, as the author realized, is largely self-inflicted by these flawed predictions.
Okay, we know the forecast is wrong. We know the beautiful mess is real.
Yeah.
But I have to push back here.
Sure.
Because does this mean we're supposed to just start unloading our deepest existential dread on the person bagging our groceries?
Definitely not.
I mean, if I ask the barista how their day is and they give me a 20-minute monologue about their childhood trauma, I'm not feeling connected. I'm feeling held hostage.
That is a vital distinction, and the source material is very careful to draw that line.
Okay, good.
Unsolicited oversharing is not connection. It's a boundary violation.
Right.
Nobody's suggesting you trauma dump on random pedestrians.
So how do we actually bridge the gap without alienating the people around us?
The tactical fix the author suggests is remarkably small. You don't have to change your entire personality or bare your soul to the world.
Okay, what is it?
The instruction is to pick one person in your life and then pick one sentence that you have been rounding off for months.
Rounding off, like sanding down the sharp edges so it's socially palatable.
Yes, exactly. Think about the things you automatically soften.
Okay.
Instead of the reflex answer of, oh, work's just been busy, you try saying the unrounded version.
Which would be?
Honestly, I've been dreading Mondays since about February.
Oh, wow. Or instead of the classic, we're doing fine, just tired.
Yeah.
You drop the real sentence. Actually, my partner and I haven't had a real conversation since March.
And that's the beauty of it. It's just one true sentence. You don't have to launch into a monologue.
Right.
You don't even have to justify it. You just drop the unrounded truth and you watch what comes back.
See, I'd be terrified that what comes back is just awkward silence.
A lot of people are.
Or like a polite nod before they completely change the subject to sports.
That's the fear that keeps us quiet. But Harry Race, a researcher at the University of Rochester who has studied this for decades, shows that the opposite usually happens.
Okay.
He studies the science of what he calls responsiveness.
Responsiveness. What does that actually look like in practice? I mean, it sounds like customer service.
It does sound like that, but in human connection, responsiveness isn't about someone fixing your problem.
Okay.
It's a specific type of reaction where the other person responds in a way that makes you feel understood, validated, and cared for.
So not just giving advice.
Right. When you say, I've been dreading Mondays, and they say, man, I noticed you've seemed exhausted lately, that sounds really hard.
Yeah.
That is responsiveness.
And what does that do to the internal bottleneck?
Reese's lab found that when you receive that specific kind of validation, after sharing something true,
Yeah.
the feeling of loneliness drops immediately.
Immediately. Not over time.
Instantly.
Hmm.
The psychological mechanism works exactly as advertised.
Wow.
You take a localized risk, you share the unrounded truth, and the responsiveness you get in return patches the translation gap.
So the outside world finally matches your inside reality.
Exactly.
You aren't just a physical body taking up space at that dinner table in Bangkok anymore. You are actually known.
Yes.
But we have to look at the other side of the coin here because we don't live in a perfect laboratory.
That's very true.
Let's say you do the brave thing. You ignore the bad weather forecast. You pick your person. You drop your unrounded sentence and it bombs.
It happened.
They judge you or they tell you you're overreacting or they just get wildly uncomfortable. Does that mean Jung's theory is flawed? Or worse, does it mean your truth really is too much for people to handle?
The sources anticipate this, and
Yeah.
they don't shy away from the reality of rejection.
Okay.
This brings us right back to the second half of Carl Jung's original definition of loneliness.
Which was?
He said it comes from being unable to communicate important things, or from holding certain views which others find inadmissible.
Inadmissible, meaning literally not allowed in that specific social circle.
Yes.
Like some truths just violate the rules of the room you're standing in.
The author openly acknowledges that some rooms are simply the wrong room.
Ah.
They talk about sitting at certain tables where saying the real thing would have been a catastrophic idea,
Right.
and in those moments, keeping it behind their teeth was absolutely the correct survival move.
So self-censorship isn't always cowardice.
No, sometimes it's basic self-preservation.
Okay, so it's like if I get up on stage and bomb my set, it doesn't mean my material is unspeakable or that I'm fundamentally unfunny.
Right.
It might just mean I wandered into the wrong comedy club, like I'm trying to do dark alternative comedy at a corporate HR retreat.
Exactly.
The material isn't the problem, the venue is.
That analogy hits it perfectly. The critical mistake we make is generalizing our data from those bad rooms.
Oh, I see.
We share something real, it gets shut down or ignored, and our brain immediately says, see, the forecast was right. Nobody wants to hear this anywhere.
We treat a localized rejection as a universal truth.
And it simply isn't. It just means you found the wrong audience that afternoon.
Right.
The author frames this as incredibly valuable data. If the people you spend the most time with cannot hold what matters to you, it doesn't mean you are broken.
What does it mean?
It means you have a fixable scheduling problem.
A scheduling problem. I love that. That takes so much of the heavy existential emotional weight off of it. It's not a character flaw. It's a calendar issue. You just need to find a new room.
And you don't need to find a massive stadium that loves your material either.
Right. You don't need a huge crowd.
No. The cure for this specific type of loneliness was never about acquiring a large volume of company. It's about being properly known by a smaller number of people on purpose.
Which is a huge relief. You don't need 1,000 followers. You just need 3 people who speak your actual language.
Exactly.
But what about when we actively choose to avoid all the rooms? The sources introduced this story about a guy named Mickey, and it really flipped my understanding of isolation.
Mickey's story is fascinating.
Because it suggests that sometimes being totally alone isn't a failure at all.
Right. Mickey's narrative completely recontextualizes how we view solitude.
How so?
Well, the sources explain that Mickey had recognized a deeply ingrained pattern in his own life. He consistently found himself attracting women who were in highly troubled, chaotic situations.
Okay.
He was always stepping into the role of the savior.
So he was getting a dopamine hit from being needed from playing the hero.
Exactly. But playing the hero left him exhausted and ultimately unseen for who he actually was.
Right, because he's just playing a part.
Yes, he didn't want to be the savior anymore. So to break this toxic cycle, Mickey made a deliberate, incredibly difficult choice.
What did he do?
He actively chose solitude. He isolated himself in his apartment, sitting with the profound discomfort of not being useful to anyone.
Wow, so he was using isolation as a shield, like protection from his own bad habits.
Yes, and this connects directly back to Jung's broader psychoanalytic work. Jung championed a concept called individuation.
Individuation. So that's like stripping away the savior mask he'd have been wearing his whole life until he figured out who he actually was underneath all the performances.
That's the essence of it. It's the lifelong psychological process of discovering your true self, distinct from the expectations and roles you play for other people.
And Mickey needed the silence for that.
He did. He needed to be physically alone so he could stop performing long enough to find out who was left when the audience was gone.
So if we pull all this together, silence is this massive double-edged sword.
It really is.
On one hand, keeping our thoughts behind our teeth can be a self-made prison when we're just paralyzed by the fear of the beautiful mess effect.
Right, we get trapped in our decoy stories.
But on the other hand, silence and intentional solitude can be a fortress when we are doing the hard, necessary work of breaking bad patterns and figuring out who we are.
That captures the duality perfectly. Loneliness is a symptom like a fever.
Okay.
Sometimes it's a symptom that you need to be brave, drop the decoy story, and speak up.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a symptom that you are doing the grueling, necessary work of individuation. The key is investigating why you are quiet.
Are you hiding out of fear, or are you retreating to heal?
That's the question you have to answer for yourself.
Okay, let's do a quick recap of the terrain we've covered because we've shifted some major paradigms in this deep dive into the source material today.
We really have.
We started with the realization that loneliness isn't an empty room, it's an empty conversation. The cure isn't joining a bowling league to collect more acquaintances.
No, the math won't save you.
It's a translation problem.
Mm-hmm.
And the fix is finding the courage to drop the neat, tidy decoy story.
Right.
It's trusting the science behind the beautiful mess effect, knowing that other people will view your vulnerability as courage, not a disaster.
Exactly.
And tactically, it's not about oversharing with strangers. It's about speaking one true, unrounded sentence to the right person and letting their responsiveness patch the bug in your software.
And if they aren't responsive, or if the truth is inadmissible, well, you haven't failed. You just have a scheduling problem.
Right.
You gather your data, and you go find the right room.
It's such an empowering way to look at a feeling that usually makes us feel entirely helpless.
It really is.
But before we wrap up, if we zoom out and look at the society we're currently building, I feel like there's an elephant in the room regarding the tools we use every single day.
Oh, absolutely. It's impossible to look at Jung's theory of loneliness without examining modern technology.
Yeah.
If we accept that loneliness is fundamentally a translation problem driven by our reliance on decoy stories, we really have to scrutinize social media.
Because those platforms are essentially decoy story manufacturing plants.
Think about the mechanics of a social feed.
Okay.
It gives us endless friction-free opportunities to broadcast the most perfectly rounded-off, PR-approved versions of our lives to thousands of people simultaneously.
We can blast out the decoy story 24/7 without ever having to look anyone in the eye.
And that points to a much deeper issue. By spending all of our psychological energy updating and managing this decoy story for a massive superficial audience,
Right.
we might be actively exhausting our capacity for real connection.
Wow.
We might be using these very tools to avoid the terrifying, quiet, intimate work of finding one single person and saying the one unrounded true sentence.
So the very networks we rely on to feel connected might be the exact mechanisms keeping us stranded at that dinner table in Bangkok, nodding along, surrounded by thousands of followers, but entirely profoundly scraped out inside.
It's certainly something to chew on the next time you draft a broadcast update instead of sending a real vulnerable text to one trusted friend.
That is a heavy but necessary thought to leave on. Remember, you might just have a scheduling problem to fix. Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. We'll catch you on the next one.